Hi guys, welcome to the Athletic Development Show. Very special guest today, Hayley Campbell. Welcome to the show, Hayley.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Hayley is our social media force of nature here at Core Advantage. She's also a senior coach, works with our athletes and runs our schools programs. So a real driving force behind the company. And this week, you in relative terms broke the internet for us.
Properly cracked it.
And I thought it'd be great because I found your post fascinating, and I thought it'd be great to talk about it. The catalyst for it was actually something that I saw from someone really smart, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. And I shared a terrible thing that he shared as a joke. I was seeing the funny side of it, but talk about that and how it triggered you, because I think it was really important.
So the funny side of it was still there, and his actual message was good.
Yeah.
It was just the only thing he really put up was a little snippet from an article that was years old. And it was supposed to be from a celebrity trainer, and the content of it didn't even make sense. It said that females should be doing their exercises with a narrower grip, because if you do it with a wide grip, then your muscles get wider and that makes you look more masculine. Which is a whole thing to unpack in itself. So when I saw that, I was actually laying in bed and I typed out this big thing. I was like, I'm going to write a post about this. And I wrote 4 massive paragraphs in about 10 minutes. And then I was like, well, no one's going to read that. It's 4 paragraphs long. So I went and filmed the video. And I usually get about 1,000 people look at my stuff. And as of this morning, it is pushing 8,000 in
crazy.
terms of reach.
Yeah.
So that's
great.
both huge and terrifying at the same time.
When I saw it, what I just saw was a technical thing. Like I look at that stuff and I'm like, well, that's just technically stupid. Like as if a narrow grip is going to give you narrow muscles. There's just no physiological lens through that. That makes sense. But I didn't see the manipulation side of it. And I thought, and that was what was such an eye-opener for me with your post. Setting aside the stupidity of that, talk about that side of it in terms of I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that, because that's huge.
Yeah, so it's a hard thing to tackle because it is literally everywhere, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I was actually having a conversation with one of my athletes the other day, and she asked me if she keeps moving heavier weights, because I've been really pushing that for her because she's a sprinter. Will her quads get wider? And I immediately was like, who cares? Like they probably will. The only reason you think you should look a certain way is because every piece of marketing in that area is geared towards you. And then I asked her if she'd ever seen a weight loss campaign for men, or like for men to slim down. And it was like a real light bulb moment for her. She was like, oh my God, no, I haven't. And like there's a reason that there is so much of that stuff. It's because they make a ton of money off it. Like you can't make good money in that space off something people only have to buy once.
Yeah. And
so the big thing to me that I wish more people would see is if it worked, it would literally cease to exist. Like if you would buy something once and then everyone would be like, okay, there's no money to make in that space, and they wouldn't keep coming out. And in my video, I talked about how there's a very real reason why it's all targeted towards young girls. Like you hardly even see people my age in it anymore. I'm 25. It's always people to early 20s, 18, teenagers who are really vulnerable, like people who are more likely to just buy things straight away, or who are feeling super, super insecure at that time, especially for young girls with all the crap and standards that get thrown on us. That's why they target that group, because they're more likely to make money, and it has nothing to do with health or wellness. It's literally all about the bottom dollar.
And it's not about evilness, like it's having a bad effect, but it's just literally chasing money, and the money happens to be the money tends to live wherever there's a really deep pain point. That's where money will go, and that's a pain point of insecurity. But they're magnifying that, they're making the pain point bigger with what they're putting out there as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of the influencers and stuff that'll put this stuff out have good intentions. Like no, I find it hard to believe that any female who's benefited from good training and has felt the mental benefits that come from it too is putting that stuff out there to be harmful. Like I don't think that that's the case at all. But I think the industry as a whole needs to change the way it's moving, I suppose. My big thing is that we work with really talented athletes who are in here because they're good at their sport and they want to get better. And at no point have I ever seen one of the boys in here question the amount of weight they're lifting unless it's too light.
Yep.
And their questions are always so focused around their performance. Am I going to jump higher? Can I dunk? Am I going to run faster? Am I going to be able to don't argue this guy? Like all of that kind of performance-based stuff, which is awesome, but rarely do my girls ask me for that kind of stuff. And that's not their fault. That's literally just the narrative they've been sold from the time that they knew that you should exercise. They've seen it as you should exercise to look like something.
Yeah, and exercise to be toned and skinny.
Yeah.
As opposed to be strong and powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like the narrative in that in itself is dangerous. Like if people often associate like losing weight and changing your body shape with eating less and a certain type of training, which is almost always HIIT training, which it's a whole thing. Yeah, I could go on about this for hours.
We'll dive into that too.
Yeah. But with the boys, it's usually train more, eat more, which is good to a certain degree. And in my opinion, it's just far less dangerous than eat less, do less.
Well, it's healthy because you're not tying yourself. It's not tied to an image. You're not trying to aspire to be a certain thing you've seen in a photo. It's more like strength and power is more about your best you. Like it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's to me, that seems like the best way forward is just changing that narrative around imagine what you could be if you were stronger, if you were faster, if you could jump higher, like if you felt better mentally because you exercised. Like that narrative needs to be pushed a hell of a lot more than have you seen what Kim Kardashian looks like? She does this, and they either pay for it or they're genetically gifted. Like that is the reality of it. Like I'm one of those genetically gifted people as well. And so I try and use that sometimes when I'm talking to my athletes because like that's some people can just get away with it. And that's not to say that you shouldn't keep trying to improve your health and fitness, but do the right things, and whatever your body looks like at the end of the day is just what it is.
Yeah, because it's akin to me aspiring to be 7 foot tall. Like there are certain limits.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter how hard I train, I'm not going to be 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
And certain body shapes are just how they are.
Yeah.
I feel like there's kind of a duality at the moment though as well. And there's the side that I'm very ignorant of pushing the get skinny sort of body image side of it. And then there's a rising tide of empowerment as well, where we are having more conversations with girls that aren't scared. Like it's different to 10 years ago. And even 5 years ago, I feel like people in general are getting better. It's just that the marketing, there's not money to be made out of that empowering side. So we're not seeing that reflected within Instagram as much.
Yeah, you almost just have to be lucky enough to cross over with the right people
good crew
in real life. Yeah, exactly. And like they are out there, like with my coach's Instagram, I obviously interact with those people a lot. So they fall into my feed a lot more. But for someone who doesn't know what they don't know, it's hard to see. Like if there's 5% of a population being like, no, you should do this, but 95% of everyone else is saying like, no, I do this. And you think of it in a school setting as well. Like if you're at school and you're like, yeah, I squatted 80 kilos yesterday, and the other girl was like, oh, you don't do Chloe Ting's program.
No, I hadn't heard of.
For a 14-year-old, that's like that pressure is huge, and it's ridiculous. Like it is nice to see that it's changing, but there needs to be a push from more than that 5%.
It's a weird industry we're in general, because I remember my wife, I was watching a YouTube video by quite an accomplished sort of YouTuber, and she walked past, and because one of the funniest things in our industry is how the men, if you want to be an authority in the fitness space, you're not allowed to put your shirt on. Like, you know, like you just my wife walks past, Kate's like, why are you watching a man with no shirt on talking to you? Like, it's such a funny thing, because what it is all of your authority is wrapped up in how your body looks. And it's kind of like, well, he or she looks like that, therefore what they're telling me must be the truth. which is a really it's a pretty easily gamed system. Like you can just you can do whatever training you like and then say, oh, well, I took this supplement and that's why I look amazing.
If you're hot enough, you're going to make enough money, basically. It's like it in a nutshell. Like, and we see it all the time. I just feel so strongly about the fact that it's dangerous. Like we've seen some of our, well, not necessarily our athletes, but I get girls message me all the time. I have friends who have had eating disorders, and no one is born with those insecurities.
No.
The environment that you are in and the stuff that you're exposed to is what creates those.
100%.
And like you look at it now at where we're at, like you said, there's 5% of people that are good. Like that's an like we're pushing shit uphill to try and fix that at the moment. But yeah, that's why I try and talk about it as much as I can, and like am probably a little bit polarizing to some of my athletes when I talk to them about it, because they'll be mid-sentence and I'm like, nah, that stops right there.
Yeah. Which I think I actually love. I fully, like, normally we're all about listening to the athletes and, really having this athlete-driven culture. Yeah. And I really believe in that, except when it comes to toxic things. In the same way that if someone was drinking bleach, we wouldn't be like, oh yeah, each to their own, drink a bit of bleach. It's like, no, like no bleach. And you're like that because that's toxic stuff.
Yeah. And it's hard because like they're spending an hour and a half with us a week, some of them, like that's it. Like we see more of them. Like we see some of them more than that. But
at a minimum, some of them are
if the girl that I'm seeing is getting told all the time and taking that media in 24/7, except for that hour and a half that she's with me, then we're up against it.
We are.
Yeah.
So the psychological harm is the manipulation and the wrapping up of identity with,
how you look.
With how you look.
Yep.
Which is not a great way to, because I mean, for a start, I can attest, as we age, we're going to look worse. How you look is not a thing to wrap your ego around.
Yeah.
Whereas how you behave, how you work, how you think, all these things, what you achieve, all these things are going to be much better.
Yeah.
So that it's unhealthy in that perspective.
Yeah.
From a physiological point of view, I think too, it's worth. I think if they could understand the harm of lowering your metabolism, like I think that, you go on a restrictive diet and don't do weights.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. That's actually like because people talk about they want to get toned.
Yeah.
What they really mean is they want to reduce body fat.
Yeah.
So they look more toned.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge thing as well, isn't it? That whole side of it.
Yeah, and it is. Like I'm actually in the middle of diving into the menstrual cycle and how athletes can take advantage of that, I suppose. And previously all the research was done based around the fact that a lot of athletes lose it. Like they just don't get a cycle anymore because they're overtraining, they're not sleeping properly, and they're not eating enough. And I feel like the not eating enough is a massive, massive part of that.
Huge.
And like I said, that's where none of that is coming from. Well, I shouldn't say none of it. With the athletes that I interact with, none of that is coming from their coaches. None of that is coming from the sources that they should be getting that from. It's all coming from the
Instagram.
internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're talking about amenorrhea, which is a fascinating thing that happens. Basically, your body gets so low in body fat that it decides you can't afford a pregnancy.
Yeah, we can't support something else. We can't even support ourselves right now. Yeah.
Like that's definitely a pretty like telling thing.
Yeah. And when because I played netball at a reasonable level when I was a junior, and a lot of the girls that I was playing with would like for half of the year lose their cycle. Like they just wouldn't have a period for half the year and then 14, 15. And that was just a relatively normal thing that happened. And from what I have seen, netball doesn't even scratch the surface. Like you've got lots of other sports who are much more restrictive and basically hold off puberty. Like I didn't hit that level of puberty till I was 17.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
That's not a genetic thing. Like I was exercising heaps and heaps and heaps. I was eating plenty as well, but I was also restrictive. And like I just feel like my teenage years was not scarred, but like when I look back knowing what I know now, it was a massive, massive part of my mentality and of my teenage years, and it's so stupid. Like it's not my fault, but it's like I look at it now and some of the messages I got,
yeah,
some of the messages I got from girls that saw my video, like I had a girl who was 14 and said, like, I was definitely aware of the pressure that I was under, but I didn't realize that I was actually being targeted by these things. And it's nice to think that from looking at a 4-minute video, I've just saved her 6 years of being really heavily affected by that
You've
stuff.
taken off that, like, because there is that kind of that mask. You've kind of taken that off and shown it for what it is.
Yeah,
a little bit.
And at least have them thinking critically about the stuff rather than just looking at it and accepting that what the masses do is correct, because it's not even close.
Not even close. And so with the amenorrhea, well, the other thing is you're massively more likely to get stress fractures as well.
Yeah,
because that's part of the stress fractures.
It opens you up to all these injuries, because you can't, like, at your strongest is arguably when you're like least likely to experience these injuries. And like if you're not fueling your body and your body's constantly
it's in deficit.
In deficit, then you can't improve. And like there are already so many genetic factors that we know predispose girls to really not horrific, but really like crippling injuries in terms of your performance. Like you can lose a whole 12 months plus of your sport from an ACL.
And ironically, you know, if you are trying so hard to be skinny, you're so low on fuel, you're tired, you're not feeling well, you're more likely to sustain those injuries. And then you're much less likely to have that toned body you wanted in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's much more difficult.
The narrative is just so backwards.
But the good thing is I think there's change, and I'd like to talk about the positives that we can do. So the bad training, number one is going to be just restrictive dieting where you're trying to get absurdly skinny. That's just never going to be constructive. Number two is the misinvestment of your time, I think is a good word for it, into HIIT and nothing else. I think you get fired up by HIIT at least as much, because it drives me crazy as well. It can, in the right doses, it's amazing. So high intensity interval training in the right doses for the right people, super valuable part of your training diet, training mix. But some people just make it like 95% HIIT and nothing, 99%.
And if you're trying to make money off a program that is going to make, because what the general population needs, like if we're not talking about athletes here, we're just talking about general population, which is what most of this stuff is targeted towards. What you need is just to get your exercise in for the day. And a lot of people want to feel like they've done something, because there's this mentality that the harder you work, the better. Which is not the case. Like you can't work your ass off every single day. Like you can't work until you can't work anymore. That if you're trying to write a program that is marketable to thousands of people, then that is the easiest thing for you to put together, because we know that face-to-face coaching is the best. Like you're going to get the most out of that. But if you're trying to reach 10,000 people, because that's how many followers you've got, and you want them to buy a program for $50, then that's where your bang for buck is.
And if you want them to tell 10 of their mates.
It's this easy thing that I can do at home that only took me half an hour.
And you've had a workout. That's the thing, like you feel queasy and really sweaty afterwards. So like that must have done me good.
Yeah, exactly. And we know that everything has its place. HIIT training has its place in the world, but I think that there is just so many smarter things that you can do that are actually going to get you the benefits. And I really do believe that if the narrative was different, and like it's probably going to sound repetitive, but if the narrative was different and it was get stronger, be faster, be fitter,
it's more aligned with that narrative.
People are going to it's going to take a lot less to educate people on that kind of stuff.
I agree 100%. Well, the nice thing is we control our narrative here, so we can talk about that. So dumb training, restrictive calories, HIIT only, and neglecting your strength would be the main things. Let's talk about smart training.
Yeah. So, where do you start? Because it's a big topic. And that's the thing. Like, when you aren't a coach and you haven't gone through uni and you haven't had the experience we've had, you don't know what you don't know. So it's hard to try and work out how to start. But like you want, I think structure is probably the first thing that you would want to tick off. Structure and making sure that you've got enough variety to expose your body to those different movements that we know you need. And then, but also making sure that you're not changing your stuff every day.
Yeah, that drives me
that's a
crazy.
massive thing in the like just the fitness world in general is like, you can do something different every day and still get results. And can you though?
It's like I'm reading a book at the moment, Essentialism, which is a really great book, and he talks about the fact that it's like you start at one point and you go out in one direction a little bit, and then the next day you go in another direction, and then he's like, no, just take that same energy and just go in one direction. And so if you are structuring stuff up, I think I would be happiest to see people build their thing around strength.
Yeah.
Because that has such a nice flow-on effect into everything else. Because if you're stronger, you will then be able to run faster.
Yeah.
And you will burn, and the thing is too, like you'll actually burn more calories because if you can run faster, you've got more muscles moving your body.
Yeah.
There's going to be more expenditure as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that starting with your squat, hinge, push-pull, vertical and horizontal would be a groundbreaking change for so many people who are just doing these crappy programs. And in terms of your performance, like if you are an athlete, you're going to create a really well-rounded athlete by making sure that they are good and strong in those elements, I suppose.
Yeah. Let's talk about them. So I reckon in terms of push, probably a push-up is hard to go past,
Yeah, for your upper body stuff. And that comes in different varieties as well, but you've got your push-up, you've got bench. Those are probably the two big rocks that we focus on in here in particular.
Push-ups and dumbbell bench.
Yeah. Barbell still has its place and whatnot, but like I said, everything has its place. In terms of your rowing, like take your pick, a seated row.
Let's talk about the push-up a little more because I think it's nice for us to say push-up. But
true.
The thing that I love about the push-up is that the shoulder blades, the scaps can roam around. It's actually really natural movement. Like it's really functional in that from that point of view. But what I see is I was doing a session this week for the Basketball Victoria girls. We had about 80. It was a Zoom because we were locked down. We had about 80 girls on the thing, on the Zoom. And, we're working on the technique really hard, but it's so common that particularly teen girls don't quite have the strength to do a real push-up.
Yeah.
So they're stuck in this loop where they're not strong enough to do it, therefore they don't do it with the right technique.
Yeah.
Therefore they never get strong enough to do it.
If someone calls a half push-up a girl push-up.
I hate that too.
It drives me insane. And when because we do a lot of testing in here as well, whenever we have big groups of girls and it's like, okay, we're going to do some push-ups, the very first thing they'll say is like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And like you can. That's the thing, like they're taught so early that their training should look a certain way and that should be completely different from the boys. And there are considerations, like we're going to tick some extra boxes for you if you're a female athlete, but doesn't mean that you just don't do a push-up. Like you can do things
modify,
like, 100%. Like you can do the bungee push-up with the band around your arms, push-ups with a band around your hips, even just a nice slow eccentric push-up and then push up off your knees. Like
the half up, full down, half up.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are so many different variations other than don't do it because you don't have the right genetics. Like it gives me the shits.
And you will get strong pretty quickly. So we had an athlete, Zena, great name for a strong athlete.
Sounds like she'd be on a Gatorade bottle.
Zena was great. She couldn't do one. And then we did half up, half downs. 12 weeks later, she could do 25.
Yeah.
Perfect push-ups. Yeah.
Those are things like bench and chin-ups are something that I actually had a conversation with a new athlete that we onboarded yesterday. I was like, if you're going to be mine, you are having a good crack at a chin-up.
Yeah, good.
Like as long as you give it a good amount of time to try and get to that real chin-up and you decide you hate it, that's fine. I'll give you something else. But I just think they're so empowering. Like when you can smash chins out and when you can smash push-ups out, especially in front of the right people, like it does give you a sense of like power and like you are strong, I suppose, because they're the types of exercises that people pretty much tell you shouldn't be doing anyway.
And exactly. And on top of that, there's pretty well established physiological link too with strengthening your postural muscles, having better posture, and actually having an elevation of your testosterone to cortisol ratio and feeling hormonally more powerful just because you're standing straight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
like
amazing.
The research supports it. It's there. It's just people don't know how to get it. And like I said, a lot of them just have to hope that they're lucky enough to cross over people like us, really. Yeah.
So push-ups, great place to start, and you can deload them. I love a good row because I think posturally it's like chin-ups are amazing, and people in here, we're always pushing them to it. Yeah. But it is a higher entry point. It's harder. So things like an inverted row are really good where, you know, if you've got some straps and a wall, you can do that kind of stuff.
I've actually just had a few of my girls come on to a trap bar 2.0 row as well.
Nice.
Which is awesome because like beforehand the narrative for them was like, like the stack, I'm not going to row the stack. And I'm like, okay, we're past the stack now. You're rowing 50 plus kilos. And
I love it when people row the stack.
Yeah, literally. It's like we set it as a benchmark in here. And those are the types of goals that like it sucks, but I do have to push them more for my girls. And I do it purely as an empowerment thing. I'm like, all right, you rode that stack, you can do anything, which sounds ridiculous, but it does have that little light bulb moment for them that they are like capable of moving some serious weight and being strong and getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do have to train girls differently. Like it's equal but different is the way I think of it. Like you do have to kind of push girls mostly, push them along a little bit more to believe that they can do it. And then when they can, it's a lot easier because you've proven that they can.
Yeah, for sure.
And so your favourite at the moment for lower body is probably your kickstand single leg squat, isn't it? That's
yeah.
You fall in love with that one?
Yeah, I have everyone we find in here that athletes are either nailing a squat or they're nailing a hinge. One pattern just comes a bit more naturally
I think
than
so.
others.
Yeah.
And like they might suck at both, but they're always just a little bit better at one. And I love squatting. It's my favorite thing ever. Like
you and I built for it with our short little femurs.
Yeah, I got dorsiflexion for days. And yeah, we used to lean really heavily into the back squat in here. And which again has its place. It's good for a lot of athletes, but
because if you can do it well, you should go for it.
Yeah, we're starting to get more of a footy population in here now, particularly with a lot of our AFLW girls, and our VFLW girls. And I just think in terms of single leg strength and glute activation that they get out of that kickstand, that kickstand squat is huge. Yeah. I actually gave it to one of my athletes the other day, and I took her out of what a lot of people would consider a static lunge. We know that it's a split squat, but and I was like, all right, just bring that leg a little bit closer to your other one so you're doing a split squat properly. And she messaged me in the morning. She's like, my glutes, my hips are so sore.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, which isn't the goal, but there's also a lot of room to move with that as well because you can keep it body weight, you can put it into a bit of a front squat, you can safety bar squat, you can traditional bar squat with that as well, or into a rear foot elevated squat too.
Great versatility.
Yeah.
And look, I don't mind the fact that if someone's training really well for power, that they're going to get some sore glutes because it's kind of a good 2-for-1. Like they want to feel like they're working their glutes, and we want them to be more strong through the glutes so they can jump higher and run faster. So that's a nice example where actually vanity and performance probably line up. Like big strong glutes are pretty much never a bad thing.
Yeah, and I can guarantee they never would have felt that from doing body weight clams and single leg glute bridges.
Like what are you talking about? That's crazy.
Yeah, they're all in
so yeah, doing those sorts of exercises that challenge your body and force, they're enough of a stress to force an adaptation.
Yeah.
And doing that, 3 times a week. You don't have to do strength stuff every day. Like it doesn't take that much.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to be pulling up super sore from it all the time either. Like
that's a huge thing.
That athlete, it was the first time she'd done it. And so next time she does it, it's going to be that little bit easier. I'm not going to give her 10 more reps next session because she didn't pull up as sore. You'd be like, okay, cool. Your body's adapting. Let's add some weight when you're ready.
That's you've brought one of the best things that happened, I reckon, in the last 5 years is that people are finally accepting that you don't need to have soreness. You can have soreness when you're making progress, but soreness is not a prerequisite for progress. My wife's Kate started doing some strength training because she likes to do a bit of dancing, do like a Les Mills thing, which she loves. But she got a bit of a sore hip, so she needed to do some strength, and I gave her some basic stuff. And she was sore the first time and the second time. And then the third time she wasn't sore. She's like, oh, I wasn't sore. I need to push hard. I'm like, no, that's okay. Yeah. Like as long as you're getting a stimulus, that's fine. You don't need to be sore from it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the athlete population in particular, like a lot of the time, ironically, they are your really hard workers. They're the people who will be like, you want me to do 10 more? I'll do 10 more, no worries. And it's like a lot of the time we spend a bit more time pulling them back in that regard. Not necessarily with weights for our girls, but definitely for reps. Because again, the narrative for them has always been that the girls program is low weight, high rep, because that's how you tone and don't get wide and masculine and all of the things.
Which is, and I mean, that's also been flipped on its head too. Like now there's a much greater understanding that actually hypertrophy, you can be doing 20 reps and that can be hypertrophy anyway.
For sure.
It's interesting. We've got Maddie Garrick starting her preseason in here now, which is great. Great to have her back in. And one of the things we're using is VBT with her, velocity-based training. Because if we let, because she's an animal in the gym. So if we let her, she would probably just grind out too many reps. And so now the VBT is like, when it hits a certain threshold, which we're getting baselines now, so we haven't got that yet. It'll just tell her, right, you're stopping at 7 because that's when your velocity got below the cutoff.
And for an athlete like Maddie too, who is going to have a big workload because of all the different teams that she's in and how sought after she is,
and
VBT is a good thing for her too, because you can also get her readiness from that as well. And so that is going to be a really good tool in making sure that we literally keep her peaking for as long as we can without her like deteriorating and falling into those crappy habits, I suppose.
Exactly. So I think it's super useful. So I think what I wanted to get out of this was I wanted other people to hear your thoughts on it, because I think it's such an important lens. It's so important to me that the world, I'm probably going to get emotional, I'm warning everyone. It's really important to me that the world that my daughter grows up into has more voices like yours. It's really, really important. I think we've got that out, which is good. The technical side, so we've got the weight training side. Do a bit of flexibility. Like, don't ignore flexibility. You shouldn't do yoga 7 hours a week, but you should do a little. You know? And then cardio is really going to be sort of depending on your individual needs.
Depends on what you're trying to achieve. I think traditionally it's been long, slow runs are good. You need to be doing that for at least an hour, and then you start dipping into your fat sources. Like that's all. Like, and that'll be put in programs. Like, I actually found one of the old programs the other day that I had bought because I was working in a bakery for like $10 an hour or something ridiculous like that, and I was spending my money on these programs. And one of them was literally like, you need to be running, but if you're running for any less than 60 minutes, you're not dipping into your fat sources.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
And that was the only guideline. There was nothing like around individuality, heart rate, what you're trying to achieve. I was a netballer. Like, I was running Ks and Ks and Ks a day. And like on the netball court, I'd be like, if I ran more than 20 meters, I was off court.
And I know you're not supposed to cherry pick sports and, you know, look at the physique based on that, but like, you look at sprinters. Those guys look amazing, and they are not running for an hour.
No, God, no, not at all. And basketballers as well. Like, people, I think there's two sides of it. A lot of people fall into sports because they're built well for it. Like, and then
swimmers have broad shoulders.
And then they're also, those swimmers are even broader through the shoulders because they're getting that stimulus all the time. And so swimming's giving them that shape in some ways too. I think that if more people had that understanding, it would be like very, very different. Like, that stuff needs to be taken into account in some ways, because one program that's designed for 5,000 people,
it's going to be difficult.
It's impossible. It's not going to do it.
Exactly. And which is why we've gone the hard road of individualized, customizing every single thing for every single athlete.
Exactly.
Which is
it works.
It's not the way to do it from a business point of view, because it makes a lot of work for you guys. But it's the way to do it from a delivering results point of view.
For sure.
Gold standard.
And the people that we have in here appreciate it as well. Like, I think that is a narrative that actually is changing a lot now too, is that a customized program is better, which is a really good step in the right direction as well.
Good. Things are moving in a good direction. And the more times we have people like you crack it like that and people pay attention, I think that's brilliant as well. I was
talking to one of the Forest Hill basketball coaches on Monday, and I walked up to him and I was like, hey, how you going? He's like, you finished being cranky at the world? Yeah, you really like held it to him. And I was like, yeah, I'm done.
No, I think it's great. So I reckon that's probably covered that. That's good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah. So if you're not already following Coach
Coach H. Campbell.
Yep,
The
on
guy who
Instagram.
has Coach Campbell won't give me the handle.
What a jerk. What a jerk. If you're not, you should start. She's a wonderful truth teller and great information there. And we'll put show notes in the end for some of our other resources that relate to good training. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Okay, hope you enjoyed that episode. You'll find all the relevant show notes over at coreadvantage.com.au. Also on the website, you can find more information about our athletic development services, education, short courses, and everything else we're up to. So that's coreadvantage.com.au. Cheers, guys. See ya.